Last year, a family in Ohio accepted $300 for the contents of their grandmother's attic and watched an auction house sell those same contents for $60,000 6 months later. They were not careless people. They simply walked into a room full of objects they did not recognize, made reasonable assumptions about what old and dusty things are worth, and left with a fraction of what was sitting up there. That attic is in every family. The objects that define this list do not look valuable. They look like the kind of thing that accumulates in storage over decades because nobody could figure out what to do with it. And that is precisely the reason they are still available, still misidentified, and still walking out of estate clearances at prices that have nothing to do with what the right buyer would pay for them. 12 categories. Do not move anything until you have watched this entire video. Number 12. Tiffany Studios lamps and lampshades stored in attics. Start here because this is the category most people have heard of and most people are wrong about in a specific and expensive way. Everyone knows Tiffany lamps are valuable. What most people do not know is how to tell a genuine Tiffany Studios piece from the enormous number of reproductions, imitations, and misidentified pieces that have been sold as Tiffany throughout the past century. And that gap between what people think they know and what they actually know is where the most significant financial mistakes in this entire category get made. Genuine Tiffany Studios lamps were produced in New York between approximately 1893 and 1933. The company was founded by Louis Comfort Tiffany, went through bankruptcy during the Depression, and closed. Unlike many luxury brands, Tiffany Studios did not license its techniques or designs to other manufacturers during its active period. Every genuine piece was made in one workshop in New York under the direct supervision of the company. The authentication markers matter more in this category than in almost any other on this list. A genuine Tiffany Studios shade carries a specific stamp, Tiffany Studios, New York, usually followed by a model number. The stamp is found on the rim of the shade, on the underside. The bronze base carries the same Tiffany Studios, New York stamp, sometimes with an additional model number that corresponds to the shade. But the stamp alone is not sufficient authentication. Reproductions have carried fake Tiffany stamps for decades. What matters beyond the stamp is the quality of the leaded glass itself, the consistency of the solder lines, the specific glass formulations that Tiffany used and that no competitor has ever exactly replicated, and the overall construction quality that reflects the labor costs of a specific time and place. A documented genuine Tiffany Studios wisteria lamp in excellent condition has sold at auction for over $1 million. The more common dragonfly and peony patterns, which were produced in larger quantities, sell for $100,000 to $400,000 in excellent documented condition. Before you move a lampshade that has been in an attic, photograph every inch of it. Look for the stamp on the rim. Do not clean it, do not transport it without proper padding, and do not accept any offer from any buyer before a specialist in American decorative arts has examined it in person. The lamp that has been in the attic for 40 years has not deteriorated significantly from storage. It has been preserved from the accidents that destroy these pieces in active use. Attic storage is not the problem. Uninformed handling is the problem. Number 11. Original American folk art, stored as decoration or family objects. This category requires a different kind of attention than anything else on this list, because the objects that define it do not look like museum pieces. They look like old handmade things from a period when handmade things were ordinary. They look like the kind of objects that accumulate in attics because they are old and not particularly beautiful in a conventional sense, and nobody can figure out why anyone would want them. American folk art from the 18th and 19th centuries. Paintings on wood or canvas by untrained artists, carved wooden figures, decorated furniture, embroidered pictures called needlework samplers, hand-painted tin objects, and carved trade signs represents one of the most actively traded categories in the entire American antiques market. The appeal to collectors is precisely the qualities that make the objects easy to overlook: the sincerity of the work, the evidence of individual skill and vision operating outside academic traditions, the connection to a specific time and place and community that fine art does not provide. A documented American folk art portrait in oil on canvas with a known subject and sitter from the early 19th century has sold at major auction for over $200,000. A carved and painted American eagle from the Federal period in excellent condition has brought over $100,000. Needlework samplers with unusual imagery, dated inscriptions, or documented provenance sell for $5,000 to $50,000 at specialist auction. The objects most consistently stored in attics and most consistently undervalued are the portraits. A painting of a person from the 19th century that appears to be by an untrained artist on an old canvas in a period frame is not automatically a worthless old picture. It may be by a documented regional artist whose work has been researched and cataloged and whose paintings change hands at serious prices. The back of the canvas and the back of the frame are where the information lives. Any writing, labels, or stamps on the back of a portrait deserve to be photographed and researched before the painting goes anywhere. Number 10. First edition books stored in boxes, trunks, or on shelves in attics. Books are the objects most consistently carried to attic storage without examination because they are heavy, they take up space, and the conventional wisdom is that old books are not worth significant money. That conventional wisdom is accurate for most old books and catastrophically wrong for a small number of them. A first edition of a genuinely significant literary work in excellent condition is worth money that has no relationship to what the book looks like sitting on a shelf. The connection between the object and the text inside it, and between the text and its position in literary history, creates a value that is invisible until you know what you are looking at. The books that carry serious money are specific. A first edition of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby in original dust jacket in very good condition is worth $40,000 to $400,000, depending on the condition of the dust jacket specifically, because the jacket is the element most likely to have been lost or damaged. A first edition of Ernest Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms in original dust jacket in fine condition has sold for over $60,000. Outside American literature, a first edition of a Dickens novel in the original monthly parts, the format in which most Dickens novels were originally sold, has sold for over $150,000. A first edition of Tolkien's The Hobbit in original dust jacket has brought over $80,000. The identification process for first editions is specific to each book and requires research. For most significant works, the methods for identifying a true first edition from a later printing are documented in collector references and bibliographies. The copyright page, the presence or absence of specific printer's marks, and the color and text of the dust jacket all serve as identification tools. Before any old book with a significant title leaves the attic, check whether it is a first edition. The reference you need is a bibliography of the specific author, which is available at any major library. This research takes an hour, and the potential upside is several $100,000. Number 9. Vintage advertising signs, tin lithographed signs, and early product displays stored in attics. These objects are in attics for a specific reason. They are not fine art. They are not antique furniture. They are commercial objects from a period when commerce was conducted differently, and the connection between their origin as commercial objects and their current status as highly collectible antiques is not one that most people make naturally. An American tin lithographed advertising sign from the late 19th or early 20th century in excellent condition with vivid original graphics is a significant collectible object. The condition drives everything in this category, because the printing techniques used in this era produced colors of a specific quality that cannot be reproduced today, and any significant fading, rust, or surface damage reduces value dramatically, while excellent preserved examples become increasingly scarce. A genuine Coca-Cola tin sign from before 1920 in excellent condition has sold for over $30,000. Early Moxie advertising in outstanding condition brings similar figures. Tobacco advertising, gasoline company signs, and early automobile-related graphics from the 1900s through the 1920s represent the top of the category. The signs most consistently found in attics are the ones that were retired from use and stored rather than discarded or left in place. A sign that spent 40 years in an attic rather than outside in weather or in active use is a sign that may have survived in unusually good condition. The attic that seemed to ruin the sign by obscuring it from view may have actually preserved it. The single most important check is whether the graphics are original and intact. Overpainted signs, signs with significant rust, and signs with replaced elements are worth a fraction of what a clean, original example brings. A sign that looks dirty and forgotten, but has intact original graphics and minimal surface damage, is a very different object from one with the same level of apparent age that shows significant deterioration. Number 8. Vintage toys, early board games, and childhood objects stored in attics. This category consistently surprises people because the emotional reaction to old toys is nostalgia rather than financial analysis, and that emotional reaction gets in the way of asking the right questions. The toys that carry serious money are not the ones that look valuable. They are the ones that survived in original condition with their original packaging, because the combination of the toy and its original box in excellent condition is a combination that becomes increasingly rare every year. Most toys were played with until they fell apart. The ones in attics are the ones that were stored, and storage often means original condition. A first series Barbie doll from 1959 in original box with original accessories in excellent condition has sold for over $27,000. The original 1977 Star Wars action figures in sealed original packaging have sold for individual figures at over $10,000 per figure. Early Stife Teddy, bears with original tags and buttons, bring $5,000 to over $50,000 depending on size, condition, and documentation. The board games and puzzles are a separate conversation. A complete original Monopoly game from 1935, the first year of commercial production, in excellent condition, has sold for over $1,000. Early Milton Bradley and Parker Brothers games from before 1930 in original condition bring $50 to several $100s for common examples and significantly more for rare ones. The original packaging is the element most likely to be missing and most important to value. A toy removed from its original box and played with is worth a fraction of the same toy in sealed original packaging. Before you open anything that appears to be a vintage toy in original wrapping or packaging, research what you have. Number 7. Early American quilts, hooked rugs, and handmade textiles stored in trunks or boxes in attics. Textiles in attics represent a category where the storage conditions matter more than almost any other object on this list, because the enemies of textile value, light, moisture, and insects are enemies that attic storage may have protected against or may have actively enabled, depending on how the pieces were stored. A quilt stored in a cedar chest in a dry attic for 60 years may be in excellent condition. A quilt stored in a damp corner of the same attic may be unsalvageable. The first examination of any textile from attic storage should be a condition assessment before any assumption about value is made. For quilts specifically, the categories that carry significant collector value are the 19th century album quilts, where each block was made by a different person, and the blocks were assembled into a presentation piece, often with signed names and dates. The pictorial quilts with unusual figurative or narrative imagery, and the Hawaiian quilts with their characteristic large-scale applique designs. A documented Baltimore album quilt from the mid-19th century in excellent condition has sold at auction for over $20,000. An early Hawaiian quilt in original condition has brought similar figures. The more common geometric pattern, quilts from the same era in good condition bring $1,000 to $5,000. The documentation matters enormously in this category. A quilt with a family history, a date, a signature, or any paper documentation connecting it to specific makers or a specific time and place is worth more than an identical quilt without that documentation. Look for any paper or written information stored with the textiles before assuming there is none. Number 6. Vintage maps, early documents, and historical paper items stored in attics. Paper items in attics are dismissed instantly by most people clearing an estate because paper feels fragile and unimportant, and the connection between a piece of old paper and significant monetary value is not intuitive. The maps and documents that carry serious collector value are the ones that represent significant moments in cartographic or historical documentation. An original broadside printing of a significant historical document, a hand-colored map from the 17th or 18th century showing a specific region at a specific moment in its history, or a document signed by a historically significant figure represents a category of material with a dedicated international collector base. A hand-colored map of the American colonies from before the Revolution in excellent condition has sold at auction for over $25,000. An original broadside printing from the Civil War era advertising a significant event brings $5,000 to $30,000 depending on the subject and condition. A document signed by a President of the United States in good condition sells for $1,000 to over $100,000 depending on which president, what the document is, and its condition. The condition in this category is heavily influenced by how the paper was stored. Paper that has been kept flat, away from light and moisture, can survive in excellent condition for centuries. Paper that has been folded, exposed to moisture, or stored in acidic cardboard deteriorates rapidly. Before any old paper items from an attic are discarded, photograph them. Look for dates, signatures, and any identifying text. A piece of paper that looks like a worthless old document may be a signed letter from a figure whose correspondence is actively collected, and the 10 seconds it takes to read the signature is the only thing standing between recognizing that and missing it entirely. Number 5. Vintage musical instruments stored in cases in attics. Musical instruments in attics represent one of the most consistently undervalued categories in estate clearances because the connection between the physical object and its value requires a specific kind of knowledge that most people clearing estates simply do not have. The instruments that carry the most significant collector and player value are the ones made by specific makers in specific periods. An American-made Martin guitar from before 1940, particularly the larger body sizes that were produced in smaller quantities, has sold for over $300,000 at major auction. A pre-war Gibson guitar in original condition brings similar figures. A Stradivari or Guarneri violin requires no explanation of its value, but both have appeared in estate sales and attic clearances over the past century. The instruments most likely to be in an American attic are violins, which were produced in enormous quantities in Europe and imported into the United States throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, and American-made guitars and banjos from the early 20th century. The violin market contains a specific complexity that requires direct address. The overwhelming majority of violins stored in American attics carry a label inside the instrument that reads Antonius Stradivarius Cremonensis, followed by a date in the 17th or 18th century. These labels are reproductions that were placed in mass-produced violins throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. The presence of this label does not indicate a genuine Stradivari instrument. The absence of value in most of these violins is the honest answer. But the market for genuine early American and European instruments is real. Before any violin, guitar, or unusual instrument is sold or donated, have it examined by a specialist who focuses on musical instrument valuation. The examination is not expensive. The consequences of skipping it can be significant. Number 4. Sterling silver flatware sets and hollowware stored in attics. Sterling silver is the category where the most straightforward financial mistake gets made the most consistently. The mistake is selling silver by weight to a scrap buyer without examining whether the pieces have value as objects that exceeds their value as metal. This mistake is understandable. Silver has a spot price. Scrap buyers offer a percentage of that spot price. The transaction is simple and immediate, and when you are clearing an estate under time pressure, simple and immediate has considerable appeal. But the value of signed sterling silver flatware from significant American silver companies as intact sets in their original chests is not the scrap value of the metal. It is the value of objects that took skilled craftspeople months to produce, that were sold as significant purchases to families who treated them as heirlooms, and that now represent a category of American decorative arts with an active collector market. A complete Tiffany Company sterling silver flatware service for 12 in a documented pattern in excellent condition has sold for $15,000 to $40,000. A complete service by Gorham in a desirable pattern brings $5,000 to $20,000. Signed Georg Jensen Sterling, produced in Denmark and actively collected internationally, brings $10,000 to over $100,000 for significant pieces. The hollowware, the serving pieces, pitchers, compotes, tureens, and candlesticks represents a separate value tier. A Tiffany Company sterling silver centerpiece bowl from the late 19th century in excellent condition has sold for over $30,000. Before any silver goes to a scrap buyer, read the marks on the back of every piece. Tiffany, Gorham, Reed & Barton, Wallace International, and other American makers all use specific stamps. Georg Jensen pieces carry the Jensen name and a specific hallmark system. These marks on intact sets in original condition are the difference between scrap value and market value. Number 3. Early American art pottery stored in attics. Art pottery represents one of the most dynamic categories in the American antiques market over the past 30 years because the objects that define it handmade or hand-finished ceramic vessels produced by American studios between approximately 1880 and 1940 combine the appeal of functional objects with the craft and artistic values of a specific and now historically significant movement. The major American art pottery studios, Rookwood, Newcomb College, Gruby, Marblehead, Overbeck, Roseville, and Weller, among others, produced pieces that ranged from mass-produced commercial lines to individually hand-decorated unique works by identified artists. The difference in value between a mass-produced Roseville vase and a unique Rookwood portrait vase signed by a documented artist is not marginal. It is the difference between $50 and $50,000. A Rookwood pottery vase with a scenic landscape decoration by a documented Rookwood artist in excellent condition has sold at auction for over $60,000. A Newcomb College vase by a documented student artist with a distinctive naturalistic design in excellent condition has sold for similar figures. A large Gruby vase with matte green glaze and applied decoration in excellent condition has brought over $40,000. The marks on American art pottery are the starting point for identification. Most significant American pottery carries a mark on the base that identifies the studio and often includes an artist's cipher or initials that identifies the individual who made or decorated the piece. A Rookwood piece without an identifiable artist mark is worth less than a signed piece of equivalent quality. A piece with a recognized artist mark from the studio's important period is worth considerably more. Look at the base of every ceramic piece from the attic before it goes anywhere. The marks are small and often require a magnifying glass to read clearly. But the difference between a marked and unmarked piece, or between a piece by a recognized artist and a mass-produced example, is a financial difference that makes the 30 seconds of looking worthwhile. Number 2. Vintage wristwatches and pocket watches stored in cases in attics. Watches occupy a category where the financial stakes are among the highest on this entire list, and where the gap between what most people assume they know and what the market actually reflects is consistently the widest. The pocket watch that belonged to a grandfather and has been in a box in the attic for 30 years does not look like a significant financial object. It looks like an old watch that may or may not work anymore, in a case that may or may not be gold, with a chain that may or may not be significant. The default assumption is that it is worth the metal in the case and not much else. That assumption is accurate for many pocket watches and catastrophically wrong for a small number of them. A Patek Philippe pocket watch in a gold case with a complicated movement, meaning a movement with additional functions beyond basic timekeeping such as a perpetual calendar, a repeater, or a chronograph, has sold at auction for over $500,000. A simple Patek Philippe pocket watch in yellow gold in excellent condition with original documentation brings $5,000 to $50,000. A railroad-grade American pocket watch by Hamilton, Waltham, or Elgin in excellent condition in a gold-filled case brings $200 to $2,000. For wristwatches specifically, the market over the past decade has produced results that would have seemed impossible to most buyers 20 years ago. A Rolex Daytona reference 6239 with a Paul Newman dial in excellent condition has sold for over $3 million. A Rolex Submariner from the early 1960s in excellent condition has sold for over $50,000. A Patek Philippe Calatrava wristwatch in yellow gold with original bracelet in excellent condition brings $10,000 to over $100,000. The documentation matters significantly in the watch market. Original box, papers, service records, and purchase receipts all add value by confirming authenticity and history. A watch with complete original documentation is worth meaningfully more than the same watch without it. Open every case and box in the attic that is large enough to hold a watch. Read the name on the dial. Read the name on the movement. Look for any accompanying paperwork. The watch that has been in the box for 30 years is the watch that has not been worn out, modified, or lost its original finish to heavy polishing. Attic storage is the best thing that could have happened to a significant watch. Number 1. The object in the attic that nobody can identify. This is not a specific category. It is the most important category on the entire list, and I saved it for last because it requires a different kind of attention than everything above it. Every attic contains objects that have been stored because nobody in the family could figure out what they were. Objects that do not fit into any obvious category of furniture, clothing, or decoration. Objects that look mechanical or functional, but whose function is not immediately apparent. Objects in materials or configurations that nobody in the current generation has encountered before. Objects wrapped in newspaper from 60 years ago that nobody has unwrapped since. These are the objects most likely to be disposed of without examination. They do not look like anything the people clearing the attic recognize. They do not fit into any price category the estate sale volunteer can apply. They go into the miscellaneous box or the dumpster or the donation bin with everything else that nobody wanted. An object that nobody can identify is not automatically worthless. It may be the opposite. Scientific instruments, early mechanical devices, navigation equipment, early photographic equipment, and specialized tools from trades that no longer exist in their original form are all categories of objects that are actively researched and collected by specialists, whose buying prices bear no relationship to what a general estate sale assigns to a miscellaneous item. A collection of early daguerreotype photographs in their original cases, found in an attic trunk, examined by a specialist in early photography, has sold for over $12,000. A set of 18th century surveying instruments in their original fitted case brought over $8,000 at specialist auction. A collection of early apothecary bottles in their original cabinet sold for over $15,000 to a medical history collector. Before any unidentified object leaves the attic, photograph it from every angle. Then take those photographs to a specialist, not a general antique dealer, a specialist in whatever the object appears to be related to. Photographs of unidentified objects have been sent by email to curators at the Smithsonian Institution, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and dozens of other institutions whose staff answer these inquiries as a matter of public service. The attic object you cannot identify may be the most significant thing in the house. You will not know until you ask someone who can tell you. Start with the things you do not recognize. Those are the things nobody has priced correctly yet. $300 for contents that sold for $60,000. $1,500 for objects that resurfaced at auction, with estimates starting at $25,000. Those numbers from the beginning of this video are not hypothetical. They are documented. They are the outcome of decisions made in attics by people who were doing what seemed reasonable given what they knew at the time. What you know now is different. Before anything comes down from that attic, before any box goes to the estate sale, before any truckload goes to the donation center, go through the 12 categories on this list and ask the specific question that applies to each one. Not whether the object looks valuable, whether it might be the kind of object that a specialist in that category would want to examine before a price is set. The examination itself costs almost nothing. The ignorance about what questions to ask has cost families money that cannot be recovered. If this video changed what you are going to do before the next attic gets cleared, hit like. It puts this information in front of the next family who is making that decision this weekend without it. Subscribe because every video on this channel is built on the same principle: specific information, honest numbers, and everything you need to know before you make a decision you cannot undo. The attic is not storage. It is a room full of questions. You now know which ones to ask.